Trucks are here to stay. They are unbeatable in terms of flexibility, in terms of cost. They are here to stay. We used to debate whether it was possible to have a 15% improvement of the fuel efficiency of trucks. Now we're debating whether it is possible, or when it is possible, to have a 100% improvement, a 100% zero emissions goal. This is something that most of us, if we would have done this event 7 years ago, nobody would have said, oh yeah, we can go 100% zero emission. Everybody would have said, no, trucks are going to have the last drop of diesel. I think today we know that is not the case. We're still not moving fast enough. We're not moving fast enough for the climate. Emissions from trucks are going up after COVID. Petrol use is down, diesel use is up. We're not moving fast enough for energy security, and we're not moving fast enough, I believe, for our own industry. We have a situation where the United States and China are going all in on battery electric, also on fuel cell. And I think we are, we need to be careful that we don't lose this race, because if we lose it, we will never regain the prominence or the primacy that we currently have in truck making, because we are the best truck makers, or we have the best truck makers in the world.
So let's talk about the 5 key messages that we take from our study. The first one is the total cost of ownership and operational requirements are no barrier to the market uptake of zero emission trucks. It is driving range, charging or refueling time, and payload, as we've learned already. The second key message, zero emission trucks are primarily battery electric trucks. We've learned that. And there are special uses for fuel cell electric trucks, certainly, but from TCO perspective, that is not the technology that is going to be mainstream. The EU should significantly increase its CO2 targets. That is our main takeaway from this study, and this is referring to what Edo said. There are certain accelerators of that market uptake that are necessary, and that was your question, Roger, as well. So this is the key thing that we need policymakers to take into account and deliver. And we think on the basis of this study, 100% in 2035 is both necessary and possible.
So we believe that we need to set a very clear goal to phase out combustion engines to go towards 100% zero-emission heavy-duty truck sales.
Quoting the most recent assessment report from the IPCC, we need immediate and deep emission reductions across all sectors if we want to stay within 1.5 degrees global warming. And I think all of us are aware that we're already seeing a lot of drastic consequences from the global warming level we have reached until now. So immediate and deep emission reductions, and let me maybe add that we also need fast emission reduction. And we did some calculations to stay within the Paris Agreement, to limit global warming well below 2 degrees, and undertake efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees. What is the remaining amount, the remaining budget of carbon dioxide emissions that the European transport sector could emit? And it's actually quite limited. So if we assume a linear reduction curve, we need to be carbon neutral in European transport from all transport modes by 2045 or 2048 latest, which is a bit more ambitious than the European target of climate neutrality 2050. However, we need to start really fast, as the IPCC correctly pointed out, and we need some emission reduction by 2030 of minus 30, minus 35%, which means all vehicles in stock taken together for road transport also need to have some emission reduction. And this is quite ambitious if you think that we have very few zero emission trucks on the road right now. So it would need to happen really, really quickly with trucks by 2030. So some minus 35% reduction in stock for trucks would mean that sales in that year actually have to be much, much higher. The challenge that remains, I think on the vehicle side, it is difficult, but manufacturers are very, very busy and we're on a very good path. However, what remains challenging is long-haul applications well, we would need a fast charging network across Europe. And we did some calculations how such a network could look like. The map shows you potential charging location every 50 kilometers along the major European highways. And such a grid, if it's a really big grid with some 50-kilometer distance between neighboring public fast charging locations along the highway, we would need some 1,400, 500 locations with more than 4,000 megawatt charging points.
The project goal, as described by TNE, is that we were asked to assess the techno-economic market uptake potential for zero-emission trucks in the European Union and the United Kingdom over the time frame 2020 to 2040. And we based our assessment on 4 different truck configurations. So that's a rigid truck for urban delivery, a tractor trailer for regional delivery, and the same tractor trailer, but then for long-haul transport, and a tractor trailer for construction transport. What you can also see is that for all these truck types, the uptake potential of the battery vehicle grows rapidly, and similarly to the previous figure, around 2030, we reached nearly 100% uptake potential. Because of the fact that the batteries become simply less, they have less mass in the future, so that takes away the payload penalty. So the main takeaways from this study is that we have seen that the overall uptake potential for the vehicles in this study will reach 99.6% in 2030 in the central scenario. For the construction truck, it will be 3 years later. And even if battery prices do not come down as quick as expected, or if the diesel price would be relatively low or the electricity price high, even in those circumstances, uptake potential of the BEV will be close to 100% in 2030.
That the technology is there. It's there. It's there to cover already 80% of the freight trips that we take, because those are below 500 kilometers. Technology is there. The truck makers are ready for that. The challenge is somewhere else. It's on the enabling conditions, the charging infrastructure. Indeed, we can talk about that, because we will.
In the UK, I think setting that very clear target. Remember, that's the end game. If the economics of the TCO look better than that, there's no reason why people can't go zero emission before that. But let's set a really clear end game. Getting together with energy and truck makers is the key.
We shouldn't just look at the UK, we should also look at what's happening in China, what's happening in the US. And if I can give one example, in the US, they've just passed this Inflation Reduction Act, which includes tax incentives for trucks that will allow them to reach total cost of ownership parity already in the early 2020s. So that means that there's a global race going on. And if we as Europe drag our feet, at the moment, our European truck makers, they are the world leaders in commercial vehicle technology. But if we drag our feet, we could lose that competitive edge already in the next few years. So it's a growing market. Either we fill it now or we will be pushed out.
This infrastructure challenge is one of the big issues. Be careful about putting infrastructure in and it not getting used, though.
The short answer is yes. We're going to have enough. We're going to have enough power to power the electrification of the European society and economy.
And are we also able to reinforce the grid in time to get the power from the production into the vehicles?
That's exactly the point, Roger. So it's not an issue of whether we have power, but rather whether we are able to bring it where power is needed. If I need to be honest, the amount and the size of the investment is going to be pretty big. By 2030, we need to spend something between 25 and 35 billion euros just to strengthen the grid for e-mobility reasons. So we are doing it. Our members are doing it all across Europe. And let me say that with clear targets, there is an extra incentive to do it.
So there is something beyond the TCO that also matters, yeah? And I think that was highlighted in the study. I didn't have the time to look at the assumptions of the study, but I assume that they're probably assuming the same electricity price directly in the vehicle than for producing hydrogen. And that might be different because you can produce hydrogen off-grid, so you don't pay network charges.
But
So there
also
are
some people say we're going to need so much hydrogen in things we cannot do on electricity. You cannot heat a steel plant with an electric
Yeah, you know,
heater.
it's very fancy. It's very fancy, this mantra of, you know, electrify everything you can and then the rest is hydrogen. It's fine. But the grid, it's going to be a limiting factor. And then you have to electrify heating and vehicles at the distribution level. I could say the same. Choose your battle. What do you electrify first? Your house or your vehicle? And you will have problems because today the Netherlands struggles, for instance, with the distribution system, with the TSO, with the transmission system. It's going to evolve, but the speed at which the infrastructure will develop, it's questionable.
Okay, joining us online, Andreas Kammel. You're the Senior Manager for Electrification Strategy at Traton Group. You are the truck division of Volkswagen, so you make the MAN, the Scania and Navistar trucks. Yeah, the big question you have, are they shining in your showroom already?
They are shiny and they are getting shinier day to day. So
Yes.
first of all, thank you for being here, even if I'm in basketball-sized, slightly time-delayed head, but still, pleasure being here.
Yeah, wonderful.
So we already, of course, have trucks out there, and we are going bigger and bigger year by year. So next year, you could argue we are having proper haulage trucks for 40-ton and 60-ton applications out there in 2023. In 2024, we'll be adding more range to them so that they are fully usable for long-haul applications. That means up to 800 kilometers per day with one midday charging event in between, preferably MCS. In the early years, this may, in some areas, also be CCS.
I think that's pretty straightforward. They want to provide a signal towards the market that the market, the fleet operators, the customers eventually will be able to rely on a minimum viable network. And they've taken this initiative to say, well, we want to build a network, we want to support the rollout of a network well ahead of, let's say, the market volumes that we will see heading in Europe, heading towards the market in Europe, and that will be deployed eventually. So it's basically saying, trust us, there's going to be a network well ahead of what the market will need, and you can rely on that.
Can you charge all your trucks in the future at your own locations, or are you still going to rely on public infrastructure?
Well, currently we're doing that mapping exercise where we're tracking the green routes that we call it. But we would most probably have a combination of the two models. One of it is to bring some of the charging into our own infrastructure, into our own warehouse infrastructure where applicable, but we'll definitely still depend on the public infrastructure as well. And that will also depend on the kind of distances that we travel.
Most money still goes to infrastructure. Little goes to hearts and minds. Is that still important if people come into your showroom that you show them this is a really cool vehicle and it's reliable, it will get you there and you won't get stranded somewhere?
No, definitely. I would strongly agree with that. And once our drivers or our customers' drivers start using those trucks, they typically fall in love with the torque, of course, with the noise levels and so on. So that really helps. And it takes a bit the place of what the V8 used to be, or it still is in the trucking business.
How does the TCO change now that we see an increase in electricity prices?
Very short answer is basically everything gets worse right now, but in roughly comparable ways, or in ways that the BEV compared to the diesel on average holds its place. In our modeling, 2025 plus, we are actually seeing improved odds compared to where we are today. For some parts of our modeling for the next 2 winters, we see slightly worse TCO. So again, the time frame does matter. And I would encourage everyone to always try to take an average over the next couple of years, which of course is tricky with the volatility of the situation we are seeing right now.
We look at the conclusions that you say, I'm more convinced that it must be done. Well, some people were apparently not convinced this morning that it should be done, but now you're all more or less convinced that it can be done. People are super optimistic and more optimistic than this morning. We can do it. The business case is here. That's but also in the positive, and that strict zero emission targets are the key, even though the market might do it itself. Still, most of you believe, actually there are almost no people on the other side, believe that zero emission targets are the key. So we're really curious what the Commission is going to come up with by the end of the year.